windy, and I've never done this, so I'm not quite sure how the sound and video will work, but I am here with Lucy doing her mane, and I figured we would just chat about a few things while I'm working with her. I don't think Lucy's ever been on my channel before, but if she has, I'll introduce her anyway. As you can see, Lucy's not super comfortable with people being in her space, and she tends to have a really big way of saying stuff like that. So just me talking about her, having energy towards her, without really paying attention to her is enough to get her a little on edge. But while I am filming this, I'm gonna braid her mane and kind of keep chatting. So I'm gonna grab my rubber bands here. Lucy has this really long mane, and I've been keeping it braided, and kind of the downside of that is her mane gets longer and thicker and even more obnoxious to deal with. So kind of on the fence whether I'm going to keep doing this, but the problem with not braiding her mane is her hair is impossible to deal with if it's not braided. It becomes one giant mess because it's pretty fine and also really thick. I personally can't stand long manes. Her mane is long because my dear fiance is in love with it, and this is technically his horse. So yeah, her mane is long and I get to deal with it. So much fun. Since I am primarily the person that works with her. As you can see, she's pretty used to her mane being done, so that doesn't bother her as much as some other stuff can. But also the energy around things. It really affects her. Like right now, I don't have any energy towards her. I'm just focused on her hair, so she doesn't care at all about that. Versus she definitely cares about some other stuff. So anyway, I just figured we'd kind of chat about what's been on my mind recently. Do kind of a vlog style video, which I've never done before, but I'm thinking I'll do more often. So kind of what I was thinking about is I took Lucy and London to a clinic over the weekend. And what we really worked on with Lucy was setting boundaries. And I don't think you guys have ever seen her under saddle unless you've seen her in person. But Lucy is super green, really a hard ride for me in a lot of ways. And I've spent a lot of years not really asking anything of her, just kind of going along, not telling her much and stepping in minimally, giving her lots of rein, lots of room, keeping things safe for us because she's a very forward ride. So I was putting some boundaries, asking her to slow down because she ends up bolting around the arena pretty easily, but not doing a whole lot in terms of micromanaging her. And so what we really worked on this weekend is setting those boundaries, because on Saturday she came into the clinic just a bundle of anxiety. I think she picked up a canter within probably 20 steps of me being on her. And that just escalates really quickly with her, because everything escalates with her. So she was really anxious because I brought London and he was crying and just super upset that she had left, which is fine. But that kind of got her going because she's kind of mothers him and really looks after him. And so him being all upset got her worried, even though she doesn't care at all about being by herself. She didn't really care about leaving him. It was just that he cared. So anyway, she was quite worked up. So we worked on setting that boundary and just telling her, you can't just run off, picking up speed just because because you're a little worried, is it an option? And I hadn't done this with Bart because Lucy has a tendency to fight. And her fighting can look like her bucking, bolting, rearing, snatching the reins from you. Just kind of a whole slew of ways to avoid the situation and get back into control. So I've been kind of worried about setting a boundary and really establishing that I was in control. But working with Terry in the clinic really gave me a lot of confidence to be able to stick in there and say, hey, we're going to come back to my pace. And once I was able to really stick through that, she was so relieved. So throughout the whole ride on Saturday, we basically just told her, look, you're going to stay with me, and I'm going to be pretty big about putting you with me. And by the end, she was so relaxed, so happy, and just so much less panicked because she didn't have to be the one in charge. And that's kind of the thing with these really worried, anxious type horses. Sometimes telling them that you're in charge can be really hard on them. But in reality, they're so happy to not be the one in charge because this mare wants nothing but to know what she's supposed to do and not have to worry about it because all she does is worry. And that really got me thinking about how people think about boundaries with horses. And a lot of people could have looked at kind of moments from the ride I had and said, wow, you're really being harsh, you're not allowing your horse to have a voice, and you're not giving them an option to work out their anxiety. Because I was being pretty firm and saying, no, I put my rein on, you need to soften and come back to me. And I think that is a big problem with working with horses in general, because kind of everything from the outside can look the same with these horses that we have to get big with. And this is an incredibly sensitive horse, but I have to get big because her desire and her need to push through things is really big. And things can get a little ugly. So I think a lot of people could have looked at that and said I was being totally unfair to her, when in reality, the whole point of setting those boundaries was to try to get her to feel more comfortable and know that she didn't have to be worrying and panicking and doing all this stuff to try to keep herself safe, because I'm in charge and I'm going to keep her safe. All right, I'm sure you guys noticed I changed my camera angle slightly, so hopefully that puts us a little more in the center of the frame. I'll probably edit it so actually you're going to look just like a little wider frame instead of us off in the corner. But anyway, I'm figuring this out. So anyway, back to what we were talking about, boundaries, and how so many people just don't want to put boundaries on their horse because they don't want to take away their horse's freedom and ability to be in control of themselves. And I think, boundaries, it's a lot like having a child. You're not going to let your child have no boundaries, right? You're not going to let your child just go around doing whatever they want, whenever they want. And horses are really the same way. So if I don't give my horse any boundaries, A, they can't get along in society. They're going to be a danger to me, and therefore they really don't have a future. So that's maybe the biggest argument for giving your horse boundaries. But then another kind of way of looking at it, in a less kind of practical, this is a 1,200-pound animal that could kill me. Well, probably more like a 1,000-pound animal. This is not that big. Some of my other ones are quite a bit bigger. But anyway, we start thinking about how not having any boundaries and not kind of knowing how to get along in the world can cause somebody to be really worried. You think about maybe it's your first time at a job and you're not really sure how the culture is, kind of what people are going to think, what people expect of you, that can give you a lot of anxiety, just not really understanding that environment. And with our horses, there's so much about our world they don't understand, so much that doesn't make sense to them. So not having that kind of, those boundaries and that clear cut, this is the expectation I have for you, just opens up a whole world to worry about. So I do think that we need to be cognizant of why we're setting boundaries and allowing our horse to have a voice, but I think there's a big place for boundaries. Now, of course, with everything, it's not a fine line, right? You still want your horse to be able to express themselves. You still want to allow them to work through things and think. So even though Lucy was really wound up at the clinic and I was really being firm with my boundaries, I wasn't shutting her down. I wasn't getting so big that we were just having a whole fight and I wasn't manipulating her. I simply put my rein pressure to something that she could feel, but not a whole lot, and I held it there. And I let her pull on it and push on it and do whatever she needed to start to feel comfortable and understand that boundary and work out for herself how that boundary worked. But I didn't escalate. I only got more pressure if she put that pressure on herself. And I think not escalating is a really important part of allowing our horses to work through things. I'm not saying there's not a point that you need to escalate for safety reasons or whatnot, but 9 times out of 10, I would say when people are really starting to be a bit too big, a bit abusive with how big they are, it's because they're escalating pressure instead of setting a pressure and letting the horse work out for themselves what that pressure means and what they should do about it. The other thing about boundaries is I think it would be really easy for somebody to say, my horse is all worried, I need to get their feet to stop. And I want to make that distinction. I never ask Lucy to stop her feet. I never will ask Lucy to stop her feet. Part of that is because her stopping her feet is going to lead to her rearing. She has a lot of history of rearing. I don't like rearing. It's the one thing I don't like riding, I don't like dealing with. So I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm going to get a rear. But also, Lucy, she very much wants to go back to the dinner. So also, stopping a horse's feet is just going to bottle up tension. So even when you're setting a boundary, you want to make sure there's always a way for the horse to move themselves into a release. So when I say I was really being firm about what we were doing, I wasn't stopping her ability to move into a release. The primary reason I was setting these strong boundaries and kind of asking her to come back to me was because the way in which she was moving was not a productive one for releasing tension. She was moving in a panicky way that was increasing tension, faster and faster, hollow and more tense. So I was asking her to find a way to move her body to release tension, to relax, to soften, supple. And I think there's never a place where you don't want to start to ask your horse to move in a way that's going to release tension. And sometimes that place is going to look like you're just floating the reins and sitting there and letting things happen. I did that for a long time with Lucy, and I think she needed it because she was so worried about being asked for things. But we did a lot of that. Like I said, she got really comfortable with me being on her, not asking for anything. And at some point, I have to ask for things. And her natural way of going was not one to release tension, not one trying to relax, trying to soften. So what I was doing quite simply was directing her body and helping her release tension.
Hey guys, so I didn't quite finish what I was saying on that video because my phone actually stopped recording. I have a constant problem of not having enough memory on my phone. and I ran out of memory and the video ended. So I didn't get to quite finish braiding her on camera, and I didn't finish my sentence. So anyway, I wanted to just go ahead and finish real quick what I was saying, and that's that boundaries can be something that it's a little difficult to figure out where to set the boundary, how strong to set the boundary, and all that. And to me, the real clear distinction with when you would set a boundary and when to get bigger about setting a boundary versus when you want to let your horse express themselves is if what they're doing is leading towards relaxation. And if they're expressing themselves in a way that they're getting to relaxation, I wouldn't set a boundary. I would let them experience that and do with that what they would. However, if they are moving in a way that is not leading to relaxation, it's just amping them up and making them more worried, then I would go ahead and set a boundary. And that's basically what was happening with Lucy. Like I said, she escalates quickly. So basically going forward, which is what her go-to is, does not give her relaxation. It just makes her more anxious and more worried, and it escalates. So that's why stepping in and setting a really firm boundary to stop that escalation and ask her to soften helped her to relax. So in that instance, setting a boundary led to greater relaxation because I was telling her, let's not do that. Let's move in a way where you actually feel better. And so that is a really important distinction. Are you shutting down their behavior, or are you helping them move in a way that will promote relaxation while still allowing them to feel and express their anxiety? So hopefully that makes sense to you guys and you found this vlog interesting. If you would like me to do more, leave a comment down below. I'm thinking that I'm going to do these weekly, some sort of video, probably not all braiding Lucy, because God no, I could not braid that horse every freaking week. But anyway, hopefully I will be posting something every week, a variety of vlogs and maybe some riding and stuff I do with the horses. If you have any ideas of stuff you would like to see, comment down below and let me know. I would love to make a video for you guys. But I constantly have trouble coming up with ideas. So we'll see. My plan is to do a weekly video, see if that happens. That's my long-winded way of saying I'll see you next week if I come up with something to do a video of. Bye.